Go down to my office. I had it sitting on my folder. That little folder outside my office. I forgot to grab it when I come down. What's that? Wood what? Oh. Can't remember myself off the top of my head. We just dipped into it to think about how we'd approach it, I think is where we left it, didn't we? And it's a little bit more in depth. So, okay, yeah, this was the pickle industry, right? All right, did you guys already do it? Okay, I saw some writing. I wasn't expecting you to, so break this thing. All right, so pickle industry is perfectly competitive and has 150 producers. 100 of these producers are high cost, each with a short run supply curve. 50 of these are low cost, with a short run supply curve given by something different. Quantities are measured in jars and prices in dollars. Derive the short run industry supply curve for pickles. So we kind of did a generic representation of Tom, Dick, and Harry and Jim or something, right? And we kind of talked about how we go about doing a problem like that. So we got two types. Who wants to give me a flyby here on part A? Derive the short run industry supply curve. Okay, and do what? Or what'd you say? Set them equal to each other. I see a couple winces out there. Why are you guys wincing? We need to add. So we're going to sum up the individual supplies. So from an equation standpoint, kind of the big supply curve for the market is the sum of the individual supply curves. Now what are the individual supply curves for all I equal 1 to, how many suppliers do we have here, by the way? 150. 100 of these are high cost, so we got 150. So we got 150 supply curves of individuals is kind of what we're doing. Now, what did we learn that the supply curve is equal to for the most part? The marginal cost curve. So we don't have that here, but I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, that the supply curve and the marginal cost curve are kind of connected. So we've got a supply curve for each type. So should we draw 150 supply curves? Would that be a good way to go about it? We could. There's probably a little bit more cleaner way to do it. What can we do?
Do you just do like the 100 high cost producers 100 times 14 cost?
Yep. So we can multiply. They are identical. So we've got 100 of those types, 50 of these types, and this is the supply function in its pure form, not flipped around as a function of P or P is Q, right? So you do got to be careful with this diagram when we draw the supply curve. We've got the P's and Q's switched around, right? We got a P up here and a Q down here. But from an equation standpoint, what are we doing? We're summing up the quantities supplied by each individual. So really how this reads here would be a little more cleaner, would be the sum of the I equal 1 to 50 of the low cost, what was their notation here, LC and HC. So we had of the LC, I probably could have put the high cost first, plus the sum of I equal 1 to 100 of the high cost, which is what I'm doing here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, we got a whole bunch of them. But since they're identical, we could just multiply. All right, so let's start working that out. That would be deriving the industry supply function. As you get an answer, yell it out. Yep, 700p. Okay, you should be getting something to 700p. So we've got, let's see, to follow my order here, 50 times 6p plus 100 times 4p. So the industry supply curve, there's my long chain of thought here for this problem. Probably better, maybe conceptually, for you to, I don't know, I like to think of the big picture. Your brain might work differently, but to just think, okay, we got 50 of these guys and 100 of these guys, and we're adding them together, right? Okay, part B, got a market demand curve. And we got to find some equilibrium. Back to chapter 3 stuff, 2 stuff. Anybody get it? Equilibrium price and or quantity? Get an answer, yell it out, be proud. 6. Okay. So you set industry supply equal to industry demand. We get price equals 6, quantity equals, what do you guys get? 4,200, good. So be careful with the quantities of jars. So 4,200 after substituting $6 back into either one of these functions. All right, part C, at the price you found in part B, how many pickles does each high-cost firm produce and how much does each low-cost firm produce? Got an answer? 24 for the high cost, 36 for the low. Did you get that? How'd you do it, Curtis? Okay. Okay. So let's go back to home base for perfect competition, for me anyway. So we got big Q because this is the industry or the market. Let's call it the industry this time. And here is the representative firm. The firm is a price taker, so perfect competition, ding, 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 price taker. We solved for a price of $6 and a quantity of 4,200, just to kind of fill in a couple gaps. And we had functional forms for those supply and demand. And then over here is the little old producer, which we normally draw with a supply curve or a marginal cost curve, which we now know is also supply curve. And we've got two different looking ones. So let's graph out, you did the high cost, let's just go ahead and put the high cost firm here. What is that function? Let's be a little more careful with the function. What does that look like in this space? So the high cost firm is what, 4P? So quantity supplied equals 4P. What does it look like in this space? I like to put little q here for the representative firm. This is the high cost firm. Where does the supply curve start with? What's the intercept? 0. And then we do a rise over run thing of what? What are we rising? 4. I'm pausing for a reason. Here's my wince. 1 and then run 4. Why? Because we're in this space and we're graphing it that way, right? So it's the inverse supply curve. So when we have a supply or a supply function expressed as a quantity of price, which is the true supply function if you want to think of it that way, we've got the choice variable by the firms being the quantity that they're supplying based on the market price they're taking. They're not setting this price, right? So this is really the supply function. And so when we graph it in this space due to Alfred Marshall's historical accident of putting P up here and Q down here, we have to put it in the form of the inverse supply function, which looks like this, so that the horizontal axis variable's over here. We still get it starts down here, rise over run is 1/4. So up 1 over 4, up 1 over 4, whatever that would look like. And there's our supply curve for the high cost company. We've got two companies, which is unusual. This is a variation now of perfect competition to say, hey, let's suppose there's two types of firms. So now I'm going to graph another one over here. Remember how we did Tom, Dick, Harry, and we could do all 150 of them. We only have to do 2 since we only have 2 types. So we got the low-cost firm here. What's its supply function? Quantity supplied for the low cost is 6P. Inverse supply curve is 1/6 Q. So up 1 over 6, up 1 over 6, we get some supply function that's flatter than this one. And now we start to see the reasoning come out graphically of what we determined, right? The low-cost firm produces more. You wouldn't have got that result if you would have screwed up the slope on this, right? It wouldn't have quite made sense if you perfectly graphed it. So now at the market price of $6, as Curtis determined with the plug and chug here of market price of 6, plug it into the supply function, and you start to get your answers here of 24 and 36. And the supply curve is the marginal cost curve. Again, this is additional information that we don't have necessarily asked for in this problem. Okay. Are we locking and loading on that? Questions? All right, producer surplus. Yes, yep, you're right. The supply, yeah, and I don't have it drawn appropriately. Apparently my horizontal axis takes a detour right up to here. So the choke price is 0. And then we're simply graphing out this area. We go back to, so this is just kind of a little reminder from material we had before, 1/2 base times height. So we got a height of 6 and a base of 4,200, giving us a producer surplus area of 12,600. Good. Okay. So, oh shoot. figure out how to do the contrast to this thing. Okay, so I'm gonna stop